A couple of poems, one pathetic, one sort of jolly. Very short poems. Always, whatever else you do, my heart, try to be kind, try to be true, my heart. And if he's faithless, all may yet be well. Who knows what he might do? Not you, my heart. And then a poem in praise of spring. In praise of Shiraz in the spring. Shiraz is the only town in Persian poetry, medieval poetry, that gets praised by the poets who live there. In other poets, when they talk about spring and so forth, it's all kind of generically out there. But the Shiraz poets praise Shiraz specifically, and they name the river in Shiraz, and they name the mountains near Shiraz, and there are lots of place names in their poems. This poem doesn't have place names in, but it is specific to Shiraz. Shiraz, when spring is here, what pleasure equals this? With streams to sit by, wine to drink, and lips to kiss. With mingled sounds of drums and lutes and harps and flutes. Then, with a nice young lover near, Shiraz is bliss. It is true, it's the most gorgeous place. Another short poem by her. I like this poem very much. It's very pretty in Persian. The roses have all gone. Goodbye, we say, we must. And I shall leave the busy world one day. I must. My little room, my books, my love, my sips of wine, all these are dear to me. They'll pass away. They must. I'm going to read a couple of her bitter poems, and then I'll read a couple of Hafez, and that'll... Actually, most of her love poems are very sad, but here's a love poem that actually celebrates being with her lover. Though even this, she manages to get sort of a sad bit in at the end when she's saying, it's so great that it's like this now when I've been waiting for you for so long. So she still gets that other topos in there. But the opening of this, it's marvelously beautiful in Persian. I am still drunk that you were here, and you were mine. And once again I stretch my hand out for that wine. As your drunk eyes could not bestir themselves, I too can't move. As you love wine, I love the wine that's you. And I will ask the gentle morning breeze to bear a message to my love, who has such musky hair, since that black hair's sweet scent, from being next to me, has made me like a musk deer, come from Tartary. I fainted when you were not here, I could not stand. Be with me now, my love, support me, grasp my hand. Oh, I was so distracted, heartsick, that I gave my soul into your ringlet snare. I was your slave. My eyes wept tears of blood while you were never there. My feet were shackled in your curls' enclosing snare. How sad my heart was then. But God be praised. Relief has now arrived from me. I have escaped from grief. The guy who killed her uncle and her father imprisoned Jahan Khatun, and she thought she was going to be killed too. She has a poem about that, but I haven't time to read it. But this is a poem she wrote to him, to this guy who became the ruler of Shiraz and killed the male members of her family and exiled her. Why is it you ignore me so? Why is it you never pay your captive wretch a visit? Your ranks raised your pavilion up to heaven, our governments the playground you've been given. Persia's wealth lifted you aloft. It's right her crown and throne afford you such delight. Thank God for pleasure, for such luxuries, snatched at in ever greater quantities. The world's deceived you for 5 days, and you're so proud. It's done this countless times before. Muhammad Ghazi, in your reign I'm free of hearth and home and all that's dear to me, but you'll be humbled by the world's attacks. In sorrow's flames you'll writhe like melting wax. She really didn't like him. Okay, I'm going to go on to Hafez. Hafez is notoriously difficult to translate, and I've actually written an essay on how it's impossible to translate Hafez, and here I am trying to translate Hafez. He's extremely difficult to translate, partly because even Iranians who are very literate and know Persian extremely well, they will get to lines in Hafez and they will say, what the hell does that mean? that is, just understanding what the poems literally mean is hard enough. And then when you've got the actual literal meaning of the poems, Hafez deliberately writes the poems so that they can be read in at least 2 ways and often 3 ways. They're almost all poems of a kind of praise, but the ambiguity is this praise of a beloved, is it praise of God, or is it praise of a patron? And usually in a medieval Persian poem of that kind, you can tell which it is. But Hafez deliberately writes the poems so the 3 merge into one another. Another ambiguity is that Persian doesn't mark gender in its pronouns. So a he or a she is the same pronoun, and the same with you, which is obviously is in English too. And whether the love poems are to boys or girls, we don't know. Whenever there is an indication of sex, it's always a boy. But some of the poems might be to girls, and in my translations I've sort of done half and half, because usually it's really not possible to tell, because usually there's no gender indication at all. Another ambiguity is the use of wine. Wine, if you read the poems in a secular way, is just wine. It's red stuff that you drink and it makes you drunk. And in some of the poems, that's clearly what Hafez is talking about. Wine in some of the poems indicates the intoxications of mysticism. That is, a feeling of being out of the world and close to God, or united with God, or at the threshold of being united with God, as it were. That is, the taking out of the rationality of the mystical moment. And in some poems, that's clearly what Hafez means too. But in most of the poems in which he talks about wine, it could be either and it could be both. And again, this is so common within the poems that it's clearly deliberate. So Hafez's poems are very frustrating for a person who wants to home in on one meaning, because Hafez constantly doesn't let you do that. Of course, that's very difficult to bring over into another language. I'm going to read a few that come out sort of more easily than that. It's very common in this kind of poem to mention yourself in the last line or the last couplet. This can be done in the 3rd person, as if Hafez is another guy. It can be done Hafez talking to yourself. It can be I, Hafez, talking to you. It can be done as a pun, because Hafez has an actual meaning, which you needn't go into, and so forth. And so Hafez mentions himself at the end of this, and here he does it in this kind of putting himself down way. Muslims, time was I had a heart, a good one too. When problems came, we'd talk, and I'd know what to do. And if I tumbled in grief's whirlpool, my heart was sure to give me hope that soon enough I'd reach the shore. A sympathetic, generous heart, a heart prepared to help out any noble soul, a heart that cared. This heart was lost to me within my lover's street. God, what a place, where I succumbed to sweet deceit. There is no faultless art, we all fall short somehow, but what poor beggars more deprived than I am now? Have pity on this wretched soul and sympathize with one who once upon a time was strong and wise. Since love has taught me how to talk, each little phrase of mine is cried up everywhere and showered with praise. But don't call Hafez witty, wise, intelligent. I've seen Hafez. I know him well. He's ignorant. I see we've run out of time. I'll read a couple more Hafez and then we'll let it go. Here is a poem where it might be to a boy, it might be to God. One of Hafez's great subjects is how much he hates hypocrisy. And that goes through many of his poems. Okay? Although our preacher might not like to hear me mention it, he'll never be a Muslim while he's such a hypocrite. Learn to be dissolute, be kind. This is far better than to be a beast that won't drink wine and can't become a man. The essence must be wholly pure if grace is to be ours. If not, no stones will turn to pearls, or coral come from flowers. The highest will fulfill his aims. Rejoice, my heart. No lies can make a devil Solomon, whatever tricks he tries. I practice love, a noble trade, and hope that I won't see love bring as other trades have done, sorrow and grief to me. Last night he said, tomorrow I will give you your desire. Oh God, don't let regret assail him and make him out a liar. I'll pray that God adds goodness to the beauty you possess, so that you'll cease to cause me such distraction and distress. Hafez, unless a mote aspires and strives, it has no chance to reach that source from which the sun receives its radiance. It's very difficult to know which ones to choose. This is a very famous one. I'll read two more. I'll read two famous ones. This one, this might be a boy. I've done it as a girl, but who knows? It might well be a boy. Last night she brought me wine and sat beside my pillow. Her hair hung loose, her dress was torn, her face perspired. She smiled and sang of love with mischief in her eyes, and whispering in my ear, she drunkenly inquired, my ancient lover, can it be that you're asleep? The true initiate, when offered wine at night, would be a heretic of love if he refused to take the draught he's given and drink it with delight. And as for you, you hypocrites, don't cavil at lovers who drain life to the dregs, since we were given this nature when the world began, and we must drink the wine that's poured from us, whether from earth or heaven. So take the laughing wine cup, raise it in your hand, caress your lover's curls, and say, Hafez has spoken. How many vows of abstinence the world has heard so fervently affirmed, and, like Hafez's, broken. Hafez is such a great poet in Persian. I'm going to read one more. I'm just trying to find which one to read. This is one where he obviously mixes up the secular and the religious, his hatred of hypocrisy, his love of love, whether it's mystical aspiration or human love, his use of wine as wine, and his use of, this is one of those complicated poems that can be read in 2 or 3 ways, and seems to be going one way and then goes another. Good wine that doesn't stupefy, that's served by someone pretty. Who among the wise men of this world escapes the snares set by these two? It's true, I am dissolute, in love, known as a shiftless miscreant. 1,000 thanks then that this town provides friends who are innocent. If you should step inside our wine shop, look to your manners while you're there. The crowd that hangs around its doors are the king's cronies, so take care. Cruelty is not the way of pilgrims, poor men who seek their journey's end. Bring wine, these pilgrims here are going nowhere for all that they pretend. But don't despise the beggars lost in hopeless love. Don't put them down. They're kings, though this one has no scepter, monarchs, though that one has no crown. Don't mar your loveliness. Don't let the glory of your charm be shattered. You'll find your servants and your slaves and all your retinue have scattered. I am the slave of those who drink life to the dregs, but not of those who hide a blackened heart beneath the showy splendor of their clothes. Be ready, for a winnowing wind will blow. None of us shall remain, and all devotion's 1,000 harvests will not be worth a barley grain. Love is the nobler task. Up then, Hafez, and seek it while you may, for lovers will not let the timid amble beside them on love's way. Thank you.